Session 2 will be a session on online education, online capacity development, and potentially the future of blended learning. Will be hosted by Diane Bos, Wageningen University and Research, with key resource persons, Riti Herman Mostert, Wageningen University and Research, Anja Hellesmit, Radio Nederland Wereldomroep Media, and Juliette Uldering and Lindsay Swidder of TU Delft.
Continue, yeah. And now I will share my screen with a little bit the program of this morning. Yeah. So, of course, we are now in session 2, that's online education and capacity development. As was already announced in the plenary, I will be the moderator of this morning, and the speakers will be my colleague Riti Herman Mostert from Wageningen Center for Development Innovation, Anja Hellenschmidt from Radio Netherlands World Media, and Juliette Uldering from TU Delft. So we will quickly go into what we planning to do in this breakout room, what we expecting and what the expected outcome is, and then we have prepared 3 statements for you on online education. Capacity development can facilitate just and fair lifelong learning. Online learning is the way forward to inclusive education and lifelong learning. And in the future of international education and capacity building, international travel will no longer be necessary. Each of the institutions will take on one of the statements and will present an example between 5 and 8 minutes. And then we have a few more minutes to share the experiences of other institutions, ask a couple of questions, clarifying questions, and I would like to ask you, we are expected to come up with 3 don'ts and 3 do nots at the end of for the plenary. We're not really sure that we get the 3 don'ts, but anyway, let's try. If you have something that comes out of if you're listening and you have something that we say it's a do or a don't, please write them in the chat so we can actually copy and paste them quite easily for at the end of this session for the discussion. So let's not longer linger, so we can start with the first one. I believe that's Riti, because I didn't send with the first statement, so I will hand over the microphone to my colleague. Oh, sorry. Before we go, we were also, so what the objective of this session is to discuss online education and identify the do's and don'ts that are crucial for sustainable cooperation with the Global South in the field of higher education. And as I already said, we will just discuss 3 statements. Each statement has an example of one of the 3 institutions. We you can submit short opinions in the chat, and we will have a short discussion after each statement on the do's and don'ts. And at the end, we will have to select the do's and don'ts that we have discussed during the session to present that are the most crucial ones that we have identified to the plenary session. I hope that is clear. So, sorry, Riti, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you, Diane. Indeed, so I will talk about the statement online education and capacity development can facilitate just and fair lifelong learning. And I believe we have also a slide with some images on it, indeed. So why do we think that this is the case? Of course, we can go into more nuances and etc., but I will put it now boldly for a one-sided statement. So we think that, amongst others, online education and capacity development delivers more equal level playing ground. So in one of the images you see myself, the upper right image that is, with a number of participants from various countries. And since location didn't matter anymore and appearances are less to the matter and will also lead to less how do you say that, less a direction towards a status, for example, on where we sit and what we wear and how we stand or what we do. We're all kind of in the same square. We all have this laptop as a device, and it creates this space where we could say we are more equal than in other spaces. We also think that we need less opportunities for mobility, and this also relates to the opportunity to join in from anywhere and to take in the same space as anyone else. So also for our partnerships, not that one always comes to the other person. You know that when you have your friends visiting, you will always say, well, they never come to us, we always have to go to them. Well, that all changes. So we say that's a more equal level playing ground. Then think about the scalability, the more obvious one, where you could sit with thousands and thousands of people at the same time, join in at a late moment, no need to plan far in advance. So the opportunities for scalability are really great and tremendous. Then another point that we think is more just and fair is that we do not lose the context. So bringing people to other places immerses you in another context, but it also loses a bit of your own context that makes your learning very strong. So we have experienced in some of our online courses that people will refer more to their context when they're working from that place and can immediately reflect on what's going on a day-to-day basis. And you get a little peek in somebody's life as they can show us around as well. And we have seen that in a number of products that participants in our short courses have actually reached a better level and more excellence, because they could actually rest within their context and actually relate to it much better than if they would have been here. So it's kind of bringing the strength of the context along, which is more fair, we think. And then the last point, you will also see that it's more care-friendly. So you see the image on the lower left side where the homework, the home and the work is going on, where we had a participant taking part in our sessions from the hospital. She was pregnant in her 8th month. Normally, she would have never been able to join us in one of the courses. You see her in the upper right corner. With permission, these photographs are used, by the way. In the upper right corner, you will see the participant that took part from the hospital. And so we say that's more care-friendly as well, which also relates to more fair and more just opportunities for people to join. In the lower left corner, you see an image of a hybrid session that relates a bit more to the equal level playing ground. You can have also people in the room live as well as hybrid joining you online, which creates kind of space for not being excluded at that point as well. So just putting out those points to say, yeah, online learning, online education can relate and become more just and more fair lifelong learning. And I wonder what other people think about that, and do we need to counter that? Maybe there are people who think something really different, and what can we learn from that? What are some things that we should do and that we shouldn't do? So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Riti. Are there some points that the other Juliette or Anja already wants to add to this small presentation line of thinking? And maybe and other people, please share your experiences. Yes, Sophie. Sophie raised her hand.
Yeah, I just sort of have a question. When you say we think that it makes it more just, have you checked that with participants if they agree as well?
Thank you, Riti.
So indeed, the participants that mention, yeah, this is great that I indeed can then join. That has been from these particular situations where people otherwise would have had to drop out. Also, for example, doing several courses at the same time, so having the opportunity to do an online course elsewhere as well with face-to-face, that we would have said no, that wouldn't be possible. So it would have taken away also a learning opportunity for that person. But I can also imagine other ideas on that, and this is particularly a standpoint. So I haven't tested this out with participants. So that answer is no. We haven't done a broad dialogue on that. So I hear you say there's an assumption in that as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you, Riti. Dan Sandra. You please unmute.
Thank you for the short presentation. I do have a similar kind of question, because the equal level playing ground, you can interpret it in two ways. If I'm teaching to a bigger group, a larger group of students, half of the group doesn't have the smart device. Since you're saying you are encouraged in community-based learning, contextualized learning, I don't agree at this point that there is an equal level playing ground, especially if you look in terms of the technology. So what you should do is start with a decent ICT assessment where you stand and how you want to teach and how you want to create that equal level playing ground before you start teaching. That's what I experience. The technology, you are very dependent on the technology being effective and making impact.
Yes, very interesting. Are there others who think that too?
Yeah. Yes, what I recognize, it's also in the word fair. Sometimes because the connection is a problem, participants don't feel a sort of that it's fair, because they feel all the time they're missing out, because they're dropping in and out. So you really have to put energy and work, and there is care friendly. You really have to care extra for those people who have the problem with this accessibility, and you have to think about ways to overcome it with some, I don't know, yeah, helping them to access better internet, because it's also, yeah, in that sense sometimes painful if they cannot participate while others can remain connected all the time.
Yes, indeed. I see also in the chat a comment on Do by Joitske. She says, make sure participants have access to internet and a device to create that level playing field. And at the same time, I also hear you say, care for people who are dropping out. Are there recordings they could see? Are there ways that you can share information? Otherwise, we've had several WhatsApp chats and sessions one-on-one. So participants with low connectivity could also get different and extra attention in that sense. Yeah. Others who want to say the same thing or something very different?
I think Elena had raised her hand, so let's go to her. If I pronounce your name correctly, sorry if I mispronounce.
Thank you. Yeah, so this was, I had raised my hand, but for another topic. So if you'd like to
please go ahead.
It's okay? Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to address where you say that there's a fair exchange without losing context.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you say, that you're able to reflect better on your own context if you're sitting like this behind the screen. Yet through the online learning, you do miss the world, the perceptions in which the other person lives, and thereby also perhaps the actual challenges, and it's more difficult to empathize with that individual or with the entire group from behind your own screen. And that spontaneous interaction, the human factor, the empathy, also you miss that also because of like the time constraints. So you feel, okay, we have a 1 hour meeting. Also now, like with this example for Pi, of course, we don't have time for introductions. It's very logical. But with online trainings, you also miss that. So I don't know, I miss the fairness, I guess, in that as well. So the context and the human factor, of course. And that's an obvious thing, but it's something that, yeah, I don't know how we can ensure that, but it is something to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm. So you say, okay, on the one hand, you keep your context and you can strengthen that, but you also lose the immersion in someone else's context, and so therefore you miss out on that part.
Exactly, yeah, and thereby you miss the challenges that they may face, and you also, Plus, it depends, of course, on the type of training. If it's capacity building for skills training, it's also different than if it's just knowledge based. And I think that in a lot of these projects, in any case from the Hanze, there's also a lot of skills based training.
Yeah,
so thank you very much, Elena. Let's because we are of course we never have enough time, so we still have two hands that I want to give the floor. So first Juliette, and then Sandra, and then maybe if we or Rita, you really wanted to. Sorry, I sort of cut you off. If you wanted to add some more, so Juliette, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. It's more of a question to the group actually. With these online trainings, I can imagine. You're making some sort of equal playing ground with the people you know and the people who know your organization and have signed up for your training. But how do you deal with the aspect of inclusivity of reaching new participants and getting, your program out there and getting people to even sign up for them who might not know your organization yet, etc.?
Good question. Are there any other participants that have thoughts about it? I'm not Sandra. Is that in a similar line? Your question or comment similar line?
No, it's just a simple remark about care friendly.
Okay. So anybody has an example for Juliette how we connect to other people without that don't know us?
Yes, we work with, instead of online internet connectivity, we work with distributing the materials on memory sticks, for example, to remote communities. And then they can just plug and play in, and that's the way they learn at least about your institute. So the local education institute has to lead in distributing those memory sticks, and then category you throw a stone in the pond, and that creates ripples, as we say it.
Yeah, but then I guess the local institute already has to know your organization well, and there is some relationship building that's that's the base, right?
Yeah, there is one local institute in our case always that is already familiar with us, or it is by the NAVIC program and our alumni, because we are a business school, so we make a lot of use of our global alumni to promote our programs.
Okay, last remark from Sandra. I think you had another remark outside the answer to Juliette.
Yeah, very short, very briefly, care friendly. My experience is that it takes a while before my students even are familiar with using Zoom, for example. So care friendly is relatively. If you teach to, it depends on the education, the level of education, and how computer literate people are. I'm not that impressed about, let's say, the computer literacy of my participants.
Yes, very good point. Lindsay, you wanted to add something? Did I see a finger at your screen? Or not? Okay. So before we close this this statement and move to the next one, there are some comments in the chats that I think I want to just reflect on it. So I hear do make sure participants have access to internet and devices to create a playing level field. Jeroen says many participants do not have private internet connection besides mobile data. They are dependent on internet connection at work or universities. This means that they are dependent on opening hours or after work hours to use these facilities. Point well taken, Jeroen. Miriam says, agreed, connectivity not always good. We do a connectivity assessment before design and try to adjust the design and tools to the connectivity. combine and sync and async and sync learning activities, use WhatsApp as a channel, and use learning management systems to allow downloading for offline browsing.
Yes.
And Riti says, focus on the opportunity that the online training can offer, but be aware of what is less possible, skills, attitude, as Sandra already said, immersion in other contexts, and care extra for development, empathy, and reflexivity. And then Melanie, from Indonesia, welcome. Agree with Jeroen, and I would like to add language barriers for participant students that are unable to elaborate his and her thinking freely. Point well taken, I think, Melanie. And then Felix says, fully agree with Sandra, for equal level playing field. The support IT is very important, not only regarding the participants, but also the educational institution, how to set up an online learning with limited resources, lack of budget to purchase expensive licenses. And then Juliette said, indeed, language barriers, and give attention to computer literacy as part of online education and learning. And then, but I think that there are some more, but I will leave it to here because I think we need to move on to the next thing. So I think points well taken. We will save all these chats, and then at the end, I was hoping that we could send the PowerPoint with all the things and all the chat issues also to this group of participants, so that you have all the do's and the don'ts together. So I think so thank you very much. Let's look at the next statements. I just need to, and that I believe is Juliette. Just Juliette, please go ahead.
It's Anja, actually.
Sorry, Anja, sorry.
Don't worry.
I didn't print out a program, sorry. Anja, sorry, Anja, your turn.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm delighted to hear the lively discussion. And I hope I can build a bit on the, let's say, opportunity points, but also on the challenges you were so kindly reminding us about. So the statement I would like to share some personal examples about is online learning in my personal experience on behalf of RNW Media and RNTC, the Media Training Center. For us in the past year, we have discovered that online learning is the new way forward to inclusive education and lifelong learning. I'm trying to monitor the chat, but yeah, okay, all PowerPoints will be shared. So thank you, Diane, and thank you for the lively discussion. My name is Anja, and my experiences that I'm going to share with you, they are based on two roles, I would say, that I had within the past year. So on the one hand, in the past year, I had become an online trainer for RNTC media trainings. And another role that I'm having in my organization is to be the learning product specialist. And there I'm leading on the development, on innovation, on alignment of our learning products. For those of you who don't know, Radio Nederlands Wereldomroep, and our new name, the Radio Netherlands Worldwide Media, RNW Media. So RNW Media works with youth-centered change makers to accelerate and amplify their impact by co-creating digital communities for social change. And RNTC, basically the Radio Netherlands Training Center, it's a media training center connected to RNW, and we are providing scheduled and tailor-made trainings in the field of media for social change. And in the past 2 years, so approximately 2019 now to beginning of 2021, RNTC has delivered trainings in countries spread over Latin America, Asia, Africa, MENA region, and of course in Netherlands, Hilversum. We had also done some events, virtual events in the Central and Eastern Europe region. If you have any question, feel free to interrupt and raise your hand. I'm happy to address or elaborate further. I hope it has been clear what the background is that I'm here on behalf, and I want to now give you a quick introduction what and where these experiences come from. So next to being a trainer of 3 online trainings myself, I have comparative data from the same training that has been conducted face-to-face in Hilversum. So that is one part of the experiences. It's presented more on the second half of it, and the second part where my experiences result from, it's a comparative data from course quality evaluation of 15 online courses that RNTC had been given. I was not a trainer myself, and this data is compared to, let's say, approximately 30 face-to-face courses. And it's more in the context of quality management. So basically comparing the pre-pandemic face-to-face formats to the online formats. Yeah, let's have a look. So how did we experience our trainings, our online trainings, providing inclusive and equitable online education? So first of all, in terms of the inclusive learning user experience, my personal experience has been also based on feedback from participants, that we have managed to provide a safe space to hear other voices, and other voices can be voices that are more quieter, also with, power relationship balances. If you use a technology participatory, then also the quieter voices that usually would be more shy have an opportunity to share what they think. In my view, based on these experiences, it has provided an inclusive space. And this has been a personal example of an introvert. It was a very cute feedback. I was not thinking about, introverts and extroverts, but she was supposed to become an online trainer. And as being an introvert and being junior, she was a bit, let's say, shy and also a bit doubtful of this online learning experience, and even more fearful to lead online trainings herself. And she said, there was a cute quote I remember. She said, usually I hate being around with people, and I hate it even more if it's in an online space. But I had so much fun, and I now feel comfortable to provide inclusive online trainings myself. So I was really grateful to hear that. Then I heard that beautiful example that Riti mentioned of an 8-month pregnant mom who is in a hospital and can participate in an educational format or training. We also had some challenges, I would say, with language barriers. We found some workaround, but indeed there are challenges. Workaround, there are some apps who can do live synchronous translations. But still, if you have language barriers anticipated of your training, then it's important to assign more time to overcome and to allow for more question. And we even had a cute participant who volunteered to translate to a participant who was not so proficient in English. So I would say these were these kind, cute moments where people genuinely cared for each other and supported each other. We used interactive Q&A. So in webinars, we used, for example, interactive live voting where people could anonymously submit their questions, and to make sure basically all questions are addressed. And in the field of knowledge collaboration, in my view, it's also more constructive. Why? Because we used shared documents. I also used a shared learning journal where people could really collaborate in the knowledge co-construction, I would say. If there are any questions, if it's boring that I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand and interrupt me or challenge me. If so far there are no questions, I move on. If you're curious to hear some of the educational technology we used, some collaborative spaces, digital learning environments like G Drive or Microsoft Office 365. We are using a digital whiteboard tool called Mural. There are several alternatives like Jamboard for Google or Miro. There are a multitude of them. Then we use especially WhatsApp groups for the social communication to also, which has revealed to be very important, to not only talk business, but also to allow the social interaction and share some personal stories or something. And we use an interactive live voiding tool, which is called Mentimeter. There are different alternatives out there. And even if it's free, even the trainees in my online training of trainers, they could use it. But of course, we are not making recommendations and we don't have collaboration with the big tech. So we always allow, I also discovered they always have cute working alternatives that work in their context. Let me see. Appropriating.
Anja?
Yes?
Anja, I think maybe if you can round your presentation off, then we
I will.
Time to.
Yes. Yeah, so looking at the quality, I heard a comment on quality. So in the 12 courses that are scholarship funded, in the 12 online trainings compared to, let's say, approximately 30 other courses that were conducted face-to-face, our satisfaction rate has risen or raised by 4% from 86% average to 90% in the online trainings. And in the specific training of trainer online courses where I have been a trainer, comparing it to the face-to-face training, you can also see, let's say the expectation MET score had been 4.2 in the offline training and 4.6 in the online training. I would like to conclude with two statements. In the face-to-face training of trainer, one participant said, I would recommend this training if there is more on online training. So they were actively requesting online learning experience topics, and the online training of trainers concluded in a comment that says, I got fresh ideas and it's great for online course design, and this is what we all need during this pandemic.
Thank you very
and
much.
Now I'm curious to hear from you guys. What opportunities have you discovered with online learning in the past year? Maybe, on a personal level where you participated in online trainings, and what of my assumption would you like to challenge? I'm curious also to be tested, and feel free to disagree with what I just said.
Okay, Anja, there is one question in the chat
Yes.
for you. You're not using an e-learning management. Are you not using an e-learning management system?
Yeah.
How do you scale training efficiently?
Yeah.
An LMS can also partly deal with language differences.
Yes, absolutely. So for the context of RNW Media, I've started to work with them in 2019. There was Moodle platform, but this Moodle platform crashed. So it was an outdated version. So we never used it. We had cute storytelling trainings on that, but we couldn't never use it. I was also not involved back then. What we are doing now, we have created a WordPress website where we are putting all our content, and it's basically sign-ups, and you need to be a participant of a course. So we are still discovering. I don't believe personally, I have a background also in e-learning and blended learning, that this website can provide all the features that a classical learning management system can provide. But it's our attempt to make it more inclusive, to have rather more people participating, and to have less the, monitoring type of traditional learning management experience, assuring people have participated in the quiz, checking the data, how many people have watched the video or something. So this, our website, I believe, doesn't provide.
Okay, thank you. And then there is another comment that I wanted to ask. I'm not sure if I pronounce your name correctly, Rashada or Seifu. Appropriate collaborative working tools could be difficult if there's no upstream training. What do you mean with upstream training?
Yeah. I'm also curious.
I think today we use a lot educational technology, and in Africa, I think if we don't do the training in front before the starting of the training, I think you will have a lot of issue during your course.
Yes, thank you, Rashad, for providing the Africa type of experience or viewpoint. So what I hear you say is that it's important to upskill participant prior to participating in a training and making them familiar how to use this technology in order to effectively use it, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's super crucial, and we need to be mindful of people. I've heard it earlier with the computer or ICT literacy. You know, there are more tech-savvy people, and there are people who feel uncomfortable. So I agree, it's important. I would not say I have a solution, but yeah, let's be mindful to plan it in upfront. We have a coffee chat. For our scholarship-funded courses, we have a coffee chat. It's more of a social, not training-related chat where people can address their, needs or challenges. And maybe that is then also something that can be discussed. Yeah. I see more comments coming in.
Yeah, but we are also running out of time, so let's have one more comment. Miriam says, I see that collaborative working tools are often easily taken up. On one issue, though, with these collaborative tools, for me, is that some are not easy to use on smartphones, and they work better on laptops. And that's
absolutely.
Yeah. And we offer simple handouts on how to use tools, and we also do a pre-course technical check-in to practice the use of tools. And that's what we have adapted at VCDE. So Miriam is a colleague of mine. So thank you, Miriam. I think it's very important to address these technical issues and then also look for the appropriate tool. Also, my experience is that my own experience is that a Jamboard or Mural is very easily taken up. So there are different ways to do that. But indeed, on the smartphone, it's a little bit more difficult. So yes, I think that's the time for this session. Thank you very much, Anja. So let's move to the next and the last one, which is now Juliette. And then I think I can already distinguish some do's and don'ts in the thing. So let's first hear what Juliette has to present, which is the last statement. Juliette, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Diane, and also to the PI board, of course, for allowing us to speak today. I'm Juliette, and on behalf of TU Delft, I will be presenting on the statement, in the future of international education and capacity building, international travel will no longer be necessary. So this is a bit of an extreme statement, of course, but that will spark an interesting discussion, hopefully. So I work for Delft University of Technology on our NUFIC-funded institutional collaboration projects in Southeast Asia. So we are really working on long-term capacity building, mainly in the fields of civil engineering and water management in the context of climate change. So we believe that when it comes to capacity development and institutional collaboration, face-to-face contact and hence travel will always remain an essential aspect, mainly to ensure uptake and sustainability. So we feel that online we cannot expose our partners to real experiences, first of all. Oh, can you go to the next slide, by the way, Diane? Just my talking point. Yeah, thank you. We feel like online we cannot expose partners to real experiences, and they cannot fully expose us to their culture and context. And these real experiences, they include going into the field together, visiting project sites, but also just spending time together in an informal setting. Making these lasting memories over a long period of time and really showing each other what is happening and what is possible is what for us has really allowed long-term impact. And it really gets us to understand and appreciate the culture of our partners in the global South, but also what gets them to understand ours, because the Dutch culture also has its, peculiarities, I would say. And this mutual understanding and trust is what opens up minds to the possibilities and ultimately really inspires willingness to put in effort and realize change, which is what capacity building in the end is about. And our vision is and remains that projects are sustainable as long as they reflect the needs and interests of the partners. So what we need to do is perceive these needs. What do they really want? What do they want to work towards? And online, we've experienced this past year, it is so hard to perceive these needs and interests. I mean, we've organized plenty of Zoom meetings to discuss these needs, but it's really hard to get our partners to open up in the same way they do as when we visit them, when we see them in different settings and in different groups. And, you know, you can deal with these hierarchical pressures and social contexts, which you try to pull them out of by organizing these different types of meetings. And I mean, without our existing relationship with our partners in Southeast Asia, I don't think anything would have been possible this past year regarding really strategical discussions. Because these strategic and organizational discussions are, which are often held in our capacity development programs, are really delicate in nature, right? Really, you have to facilitate this, and it's extremely difficult to do this online. And we really miss this informal dimension. Just drawing an example from my own experience, I lived in Vietnam for over 7 months. And during that time, I really got to know staff members on another level, and I could really see that after, you know, really investing a lot of time, drinking a lot of coffees, having a lot of lunches, organizing a lot of meetings with different people, they started to invite me in and, you know, see me as one of them. I was actually moved from my own little office down the hall into the office of the whole faculty, sitting next to the Vietnamese partners. And I was invited to partake in Vietnamese traditions, such as Vietnamese Teacher Day and the Tet celebrations, which is the New Year. And that is when, you know, when they started inviting me to these things and inviting me into their homes and meeting their family, that's when they really also started to open up. You know, what do they think of their curriculum? What would they like to change? What would they like to see in the future? And yeah, only after having built this relationship, this became possible. So in conclusion, we believe face-to-face contact remains necessary to build trust, foster long-term relationship, thereby create an open atmosphere for sharing. The sharing should be really inclusive, so not depending on gender, ethnicity, age, background, or your level within an organization. And so to sustainably realize something, even after the project ends, you really need support on all these levels of the organization. So yeah, we feel that some amount of travel will always be necessary. And I'm curious to see the responses to yeah, the story I just told. You're unmuted, Diane.
I'm on, because I'm in a presentation mode, I don't have all the screens. So I was looking at my own screen. I only saw your screen, your picture. I was going like, where am I? Thank you very much, Juliette. Marietta has a hand up. So Marietta, please.
Yeah, so yeah, Juliette, I think I agree with you that yeah, traveling is still will be part, because well, we are talking everywhere. I see online learning, but I would prefer if we talk more about blended learning. I mean, in some cases it's not possible to travel, but if possible, I would really encourage, and especially if you look to the NUFIC requirements now, it's either online or face-to-face, but the combination of blended learning is not at all supported by the modality. So I would really like NUFIC to change it. If it's face-to-face, there's the requirement of at least 2 weeks being present in the Netherlands. Well, I think that is too long, but if you can have a long-term online part complemented with, for example, 1 week or a few days face-to-face, whatever, in the Netherlands or somewhere else, I would think that's, yeah, that is really something that should be an option, without saying that's 100% fully online isn't working, but if it's possible, include also some face-to-face things. So I support it, and for me, it would really be a message to NUFIC for a future program or Ministry of Foreign Affairs, provide more flexibility in terms of building blocks and what is necessary. So for me, that would be the biggest do for this session.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. We ourselves have also, of course, this past year, experimented a lot with this blended learning, and there's definitely some huge advantages to that. You know, I presented a little bit of the unnuanced viewpoint now, but of course the TU Delft also believes in, you know, creating good online digital products can help our case so much. And there's just quite a nice example of this past year how we've I mean, we're working a lot with our partners on open source software and how we allow them to create their own training in their own context. And we only supported them at a distance. So this remote support, which, you know, can be difficult and it can be inefficient, but in the end, we really felt that there was this sense of ownership of them creating their own training. This was on Python, which is a programming language. So I agree that this blended learning and, you know, getting support at a distance really has huge advantages. And I think also creating these products, you know, can be in the end efficient in the sense that you can use them again and again, and also with different partners, perhaps in different contexts. So yeah, I would agree that the message to Nuffic should be that there needs to be more flexibility in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Juliette. Sandra? Unmute yourself, please.
I was a lucky person that was in a twofold position. I did some assessments on the spot. We call it assessments in terms of ICT. Where do they stand didactically? Because a lot of change management is also needed within institutes to effectively deploy online learning. So in my opinion, it's absolutely necessary to be on the spot where the hub of the online training in future will take place, to do assessments from different perspectives. And based on that assessment and getting to know the people and talk about what is needed for the change to deploy online learning, you make much more impact and sustainable impact. So for me, definitely traveling makes sense also for the kickoff of online learning practices. I can't do without. Yeah, I do it without now, but it takes me 5 times longer.
Thank you, Sandra. Are there any other people that want to comment on it? I don't see many. I only see agreement with you, Juliette, that we should have more blended face-to-face and online, and also offline, a lot of offline. I think we also agree that we would like to see more flexibility in how we offer that blended online and blended learning is the future for us, I think. Are there any other comments or additions that you want to make to this point?
Me or sorry, the whole audience? Sorry? Did you mean me or just to?
No, just the group.
Okay.
You can also add if you have still something to add. Then please do so.
Yeah, I think everyone here would agree that there needs to come a new program, right? Like a new OKP. I think that's number one priority, and it's nice that we are given the opportunity to give some advice on as to how that should be implemented and organized.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Sorry, is it Sefu or Rashad? Maybe I'm so sorry.
No, it's correct. It's correct. I just have one question for Juliette. I fully agree with you that contact will always be necessary, but regarding the SDG, and don't you think we should in the future limit the travel?
Juliette?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a question, right? You were just saying that you agree, or am I understanding you incorrectly?
Yeah. I think travel is very nice, but I do think that sometimes, at least I did some calculations in some previous year, and then it turned out that 3 months of the 12 months I was outside the country. And especially if you have a family, that might be very, I mean, I love it, that's not the issue, but it might be very heavy and maybe not the most sustainable way of capacity development. But for me also, I agree, connection and being on the spot and tasting the atmosphere and the context is quite important to be highly effective. So Mariette said still traveling, but less than before. Yes, I would agree. So thank you very much, Juliette. We have about 11 minutes left in this session. And I think what the next steps will do, we have seen a lot of do's and don'ts in the chat box, and also that came around in discussions. First of all, I want to thank the three presenters for their statements and presenting their examples. So I think we now are sort of need to define which do's and don'ts we would like to present to the plenary, and thus also to NUFIC and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I will go out of the presentation mode of my thing, so I can type in straight away some of the do's and don'ts. The only thing is, I think, how do I get out of? Let me just stop sharing quickly and then just open the PowerPoint of the do's and don'ts. So we already, so what I would like to suggest is that we select with the group the 3 do's and don'ts, and then all the other do's and don'ts that we have posted in the chat, we put it in the PowerPoint so that we have a long list of do and don'ts that we all know what is going on. And then after this session this afternoon, I will route the complete PowerPoint with all the do's and don'ts that are also in the chat box, so that we have a nice, concise, long list. But I think from all the issues that we have now discussed, I think we need to select the ones that are really the most important that we want to give to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and NUFIC. So, so I would like to type while we discuss and agree, if that's okay with you, so that we can then share that with for the plenary, which will start in 25 minutes after we hopefully have a break. I also noticed that we don't have a lot of don'ts. I have not heard a lot of don'ts. So so if we go to the first statements, and that was about, okay, I see somebody in the chat. Positive group, yes, thank you, yes, Joske. But we also, when we were preparing this, with the 3 institutions, we also did not come up with a lot of don'ts. The only really don'ts that we came up with, which I think is also reflected here, that only face-to-face training is not advisable anymore. That we really would like to go to a blended approach. So. So let's see how we can organize this. Yeah, Sandra, you had a question, or you were just stretching your arm? You're on mute.
We do have some don'ts.
Okay, so
I'm referring to traveling, for example. Because there are parties that are under the impression that if you initiate online learning initiatives, that traveling is not necessary anymore and limit the budget for traveling. So we have to be very careful in that regard. I think that's a don't. And capacity building on online learning, in order to make it more sustainable, there is a lot of capacity building needed. A framework for how to implement locally capacity building. And I think we need to focus on that part as well. So capacity building for online learning, how to deploy online learning is also a fact, although I saw a different statement in your document.
Yes, that was, yeah, we also had some statements in the documents, but that's just to, we just extrapolated that from the experiences, but that's, so that's of course always for discussion. So can you repeat the first don't again?
Stop traveling, probably limit traveling, but don't stop it.
Okay.
Because you need a lot of, let's say, intake knowledge So traveling can be limited, but since we guide towards blended learning, and since we guide towards sustainability, it is still needed.
If somebody is not agreeing with that, please let me know. And I think maybe we should add something depending on the context, because I can imagine that in some of the areas where we have done already a lot of capacity building, we would not like to travel as much, but there are some other areas where we do need to do a little bit more of travel. So I would like to then, depending on the context, I will the arrows in spelling I will take out during the break.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, depending on context can be limited, but is still necessary.
Yeah.
Can we agree with that?
To me, sorry.
Yes.
Right. To me, it sounds quite black and white. Don't travel for international education. Whereas I think what we mostly mean is don't travel if unnecessary, and supplement with online training when possible. Perhaps.
Yeah, so don't is that travel for international education is need. We didn't say don't, it's just don't number one. So it's not don't travel, but the statement is travel for international education capacity building can be limited depending on the context, but is still necessary. And then I will add should, what did you say? And should be combined with online education. That's what you said, Ilana?
Yeah, sure.
Online should be
blended, maybe, because we are speaking about blended learning. I think that's what we agreed most.
Yeah. So online and blended learning, because I'm not sure that everybody understands or blended also as online. Is that okay? So we have covered everything. Okay, we need to move on. We have 3 more minutes. I think, what are we saying? What did I see in the chat? I think we also say that for the do's, what I heard, especially from the first discussion, is that we need to pay attention to the technology, the connectivity, and the infrastructure for online education and capacity, and we should also invest in that. Is that
Diane,
yeah?
There is a good summary, I think, in the chat for that one.
Okay. Where?
I think Elana and Meliani said, don't assume the level playing field are equal and students have the same language capacity and computer literacy.
IT accessibility. I think you can maybe copy paste it from the chat.
Absolutely.
Elena, I fully agree on you, but probably we should change it to a do as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a don't assume, but on the other hand, you can say prevent or adjust your online settings to the local situation in order to reach sustainability. So, and to reach that, you do need some assessments, IT, computer literacy, IT equipment, infrastructure. So I would say a do is always do some pre-assessments before you start your online learning practices.
The advice would maybe also be that in a future program, this flexibility is built in, right? Where organizations are allowed to make this assessment themselves and what fits best in the context.
We can create a framework, for example. They can do the assessment, and then it's up to them to decide what fits best in the context. Because you have different layers of online learning. There's not one mode. You can adjust.
Maybe then it's do invest in computer hardware, software, internet accessibility, and computer training, for example.
But again, that's maybe sometimes necessary, but not always, right?
Not always.
On the context. So I would say, do make a context-specific assessment of the needs, including computer literacy.
Is that point is that something for the Ministry of NUFIC or Foreign Affairs? Is that something, because I think that depends for us as institutions.
Yeah, so I was saying maybe the do is for them to build in the flexibility for us to be allowed to do this.
That's what I was trying to type. So for future online education development should be flexible to cater for
local needs and context.
Local needs and connectivity, local needs and
ICT infrastructure status, we call it.
I see.
I think just to add to that, I think the most important point of the whole discussion is indeed do be flexible.
Yeah.
And what that means is, of course, if we're asking NUFIC, it's do be flexible in the type of funding you're making available, because someone mentioned that it's either now online or physical. So NUFIC or the ministry or whoever's funding should also be flexible in the program that they're allowing us to apply for. So do be flexible should be for us, but it should also be for the actual program. So the program should be, formulated as it should be a blend of online and physical activities or something like that.
I would be more strictly and say guide towards capacity building in blended learning practices, because they don't realize sufficiently what blended learning implies and how much high the impact can be if we pursue blended learning. So,
is that maybe a don't, something along the lines of don't distinguish or only provide either online or offline funding opportunities, and instead provide funding for blending offline and face-to-face blended, for blending offline and face-to-face components?
Blending, yes. Actually, I do that in all my projects.
Yeah, we are running out of time. It's already 2 minutes past 10:30, so we are cutting into the break. So I think we can maybe some people can stay behind and help phrase the do's and don'ts. So I think the flexibility in the type of funding available for online, blended, and other learning. We are being kicked out of the breakout.
I think the wording is important though, so it is
yeah, but we also need to have we need 2 more. So I think the other thing that is investment in good digital, there should be funds available to invest in good digital products. I think that's a definitely do that I hear throughout the discussions several times.
But based on the assessment, I think that's what they're saying too, because for sometimes it will be necessary and for other times it won't be.
No, but it's also that we want to invest in reusable, but I'm not really sure that it's what is the overall message is that we need to invest, that we should also have funds available. And I'm not really sure that at this moment for the bigger meeting that if it's necessary or not is really important.